What's going on, everyone? It's Derek with GiBoard North America, and I'm really excited today to take you through this little tutorial on our SlackBoard Pros that were inspired from the sport or concept of slacklining. So I know a lot of you are probably outdoor enthusiasts, you know what slacklining is, but just in case, slacklining is this sort of sport or activity that was created in the 1970s by mountain climbers who, after they got bored climbing, would tie their climbing gear together, anchor it between two trees, and see who could tightrope walk on it the longest, right? Well, since then, the sport or activity has evolved tremendously, and about 10 years ago, the creators of this product, one of which was actually a physical therapist, started to realize the incredible brain, body, and balance training benefits that the slacklining offers. So they thought, how can we take this concept or sport that is typically super advanced and very cumbersome to set up? How can we minimize the setup time and also make it safe and effective for patients and individuals of all medical conditions and age ranges? We have the SlackBoard Pro here, which was a solution to that problem. And you'll see here that we have two variations. We have one that's black with two lines, the other that's blue with one line. What's cool is that our SlackBoard Pros can be altered. You can set them up with either one line or two very quickly and easily. I have each here just to show you the two different setups. Now, the boards are 42 inches in length, made of a very high quality maple hardwood that's sourced in the United States. And at the bottom, you'll have rubber pads that really make it more of an industrial grade product that will withstand lots of wear and tear. The boards can support up to 400 pounds very easily. We have all sorts of individuals from kids to offensive linemen in the National Football League. Literally, many NFL teams use these that are using them safely, effectively, without any breakage or considerations along those lines. So very, very high quality products. Now, what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna demonstrate some exercises on each of these two boards. So you can see how we might use this with a little bit more of an advanced patient in a one-line setup, and how we can regress a lot of those exercises with this two-line setup here that obviously is gonna open up some bilateral standing for us as well. So let's go ahead and get into some exercises. I'm gonna show you two different progressions on each board, and then we'll go into a couple specific exercises as it relates to patients who might need help rehabilitating certain regions of the body. For example, we'll check out the ankles, knees, hips, low back, and then we'll sort of round things out there. So let's get into some of these exercises. Okay, so let's start here. You're probably looking at the SlackBoard right now saying, how's this different, or what are my patients gonna get that they're not getting here with a BOSU ball or a balance platform or a wobble board? Let's speak to that real quick here with our single line setup. So the biggest difference that you're gonna notice between a SlackBoard and one of your other balance training implements is that when you're standing on a SlackBoard, your foot and therefore your body are suspended off the ground, right? My foot is not in contact with the ground. It's in contact with a line that's suspended. So as I displace more of my body weight into this foot, the line is gonna start to vibrate because it's suspended. Those little perturbations make for just an incredibly different balance training experience that you just kind of have to feel to be able to internalize. But we're also finding through some research being done at UCLA that those little perturbations also create a ton of additional muscle activation benefits, particularly in the lateral hips and the low back. So obviously those are critical areas to strengthen and stabilize for everyone. And this really makes the balance strategy less foot and ankle like you would typically have, although there is still a ton of activity taking place as the foot is in contact with the line. But it makes it more of a full body balance training strategy. As we see more muscle activation taking place in the lumbo-pelvic hip complex, you're really having to strengthen or stabilize through your entire body as a result of that line moving laterally under your body. Again, hopefully I'm summing up the concept well using words, but experiencing it also helps you internalize it a lot better too. So that's one of the ways the SlackBoard Pro is different from your traditional balance training tools. We'll speak to a few additional differentiating features of the SlackBoards when we move to our two-line option. But again, we're gonna start here with one line now. We're gonna go through a balance progression. Now, it is important to note, first of all, the single line setup is more advanced than the double line. With a single line setup, typically we're standing parallel with the line, engaging in some sort of tandem stance or tandem walk, or in a position where one foot is on the line, one foot is off, and we're maybe doing lunging or squatting patterns or ball tossing and things like that, all while getting that unique vibration, that feedback, that instability produced by the line. But there are ways that we can engage in exercise as well where we're perpendicular We just usually will not be engaging in a bilateral stance on the single line board. That's way too challenging. That's actually where we would visit the double line board. And I bring all this up because I know a lot of us who are working with clients or patients in the clinic typically see individuals who are deconditioned. Most individuals are going to want to start with a 2-line setup. I'm just starting here so we could speak and sort of integrate that concept of slacklining and get you more familiar with the product first. But yeah, this setup here is definitely more advanced. These are where you're going to be working with maybe your younger athletes or your more fit, active adults, and even younger kids who are capable of balancing here. The thinner feet actually make for a much easier balance training experience. So toddlers, we have a ton of occupational therapists, counselors, PE teachers that use this with kids as young as 3 years old. So just to give you sort of the range of individuals. But let's start with a balance progression here. And just to give you an idea of how we might start a little bit more of an advanced patient on here who maybe is rehabilitating an ankle, a knee, a hip, of course, been cleared to engage in this type of exercise. We're going to bring up our body mass onto the foot with the line on the board, and we're just going to try to briefly balance for a few seconds and then bring it back down. We're going to repeat that a few times just so that the patient can sort of feel the unique feedback, the unique effect that the slackline provides. After we do that, we'll ramp it up a little bit by instructing the patient to sort of maintain their stability, maintain their center, try to take that down foot, bring it over the line in front of their body and tap the toe to the floor on the other side and then bring it over and tap again. So we're just engaging in this movement now where we're crossing over the midline of the body, further enhancing the balance training demands. But it's an incredibly beneficial brain-body exercise that you'll find that's very simplistic in nature, but challenging even for someone who's more advanced. You can, of course, engage in this exercise going behind the body as well, a little toe tap to the back, to the left and right. Now, let's bring the foot a little bit forward here, and we're still on the line here. I'm going to take the grounded leg, I'm going to bring it back, balls of my toes are down. Now I'm in this staggered stance, so balance is compromised again, and I've got my one foot on this unstable surface. I'm going to descend into whatever depth is right for me as a patient here. As I really load my legs now, you should be able to see this line vibrating a lot more. Okay, this is where, as we're loading the lower extremities when we're standing on the lines to a more significant degree, either by just moving lower towards the earth or using resistance like a medicine ball or a kettlebell or something. This is where you're really going to feel the effects of this line ramp up. So I can stay here, I can ascend and descend very mindfully, of course, because of the instability. This is one position that we like to put individuals in, especially athletes, and engage in all sorts of ball tossing drills, whether or not we're rotating or passing to the front or going in whatever direction, making it sort of multiplanar, right? But this is another popular position that we can engage in these exercises from, as is from the perpendicular position. So it'll be the same concept, only that my foot is now perpendicular to the line. I can step back, descend, and I can engage in all sorts of activities here. With, again, just a little bit of a different effect created by the slack line under my body. So those are a couple of balance training progressions that we can visit. Okay, next we're gonna walk the line, and this is just as much fun as it is effective. We see this actually being done from pediatric, OT, and PT all the way up to clinicians and fitness professionals working with older adults for the balance and brain-body training benefits it offers. And if you're on social media and you've been scrolling in your feed and you've seen the boards, you've probably seen people doing exercises like I'm gonna show you right now. But again, very valid from a balance training standpoint. This really enables you to incorporate some fun into your programming as well, which especially we've gotten great feedback from all those that work with kids and even adults in that case too, when they're able to break up the monotony of exercise with some fun. So here's the challenge here. We're gonna start with the joint stacked, arms out, slight flexion in the knees. We're gonna push up on the line here, and then we're just gonna take a step forward as we balance. When we get to the nose of the board, you can stick that landing and hold, or you can rock up for a tail lift, balance there, and then bring it back to your start position. Okay? From there, you can even go into a nose lift as well. So say I got back to this position here. I'm able to lift the nose of the board, balance here, and then come back down. These are things that kids love. They feel like they're, carving down the mountain on a snowboard or something, or on a skateboard. Really, really fun and effective. Now, some other really unique tricks that we can do on here is this stance where we are sort of getting into a nose lift. We're dropping into our board stance here, and then we're moving into a lunge, tapping the knee, coming back up to the top, tapping the knee. I can kind of come up here, hinge forward, lift the back of the board, see if I can balance there momentarily, come back to the top, stand. Those are some challenging things. You really have to be aware of your body, but that's part of what all this is about. It's a learning process, right? We're actually teaching our patients, in this case, how to load and unload in various directions to keep their body centered, upright, and stable. And hopefully that translates into life outside of your clinic as well, right? But anyway, we're gonna switch now to our double line board, talk a little bit about that, go through some exercises, and then wrap things up. Okay, so with my 2-line setup here, you'll see that this is going to be much easier for most patients to access. So I've got 2 lines supporting my body now. Typically, we would use the board setup with 2 lines in this bilateral stance because I am so much more stable standing in this bilateral position, right? So from here, we can access all sorts of whatever, common movements that you typically do while standing on stable ground, whether it's hip hinging, deadlifting, squatting, maybe I'm stepping off the board, engaging in these lunging patterns, right? All sorts of different things that we can do that will be pretty accessible to lots of the patients that you work with, as long as they've been cleared, of course, to move in those ways. We can also use the double line board in a position where we are standing parallel with the lines again, just taking smaller steps now as maybe we're progressing towards the use of a single line board, but we're not quite there yet. So we're sort of conditioning the body to learn how to respond to the stimulus while still being able to stand in this bilateral stance. One thing I do want to speak to real quick here about the 2-line setup, and we see this being used a lot in PT, OT, and even a lot in PE classes, is the rebounding effect that you get through using the boards. When kids stand on this, they will just engage in this bouncing, rebounding pattern for several minutes at a time because of the benefits to the central nervous system. This creates sort of a down regulation of the central nervous system. If you ever read up on any of the research of rebounding on a trampoline and how that relates to emotional regulation, this very much translates into that. But this rebounding is how we see lots of clinicians beginning sessions with patients, with their pediatric patients. And then moving into other exercises on the board as well that keep them engaged and keep them having fun, but still teach them concepts of balance and body awareness, like I'm carving down a mountain and I'm gonna lift the nose of my board, and then I'm gonna walk nice and stable laterally, and I'm gonna go to the other end and lift the nose of the board, right? And then I might squat down and pick something up off the ground and put it up here, and just sort of gamify the whole experience. But kids just love this, and the benefits they're getting while using the board are phenomenal, both from a neural and or an emotional and balance training perspective. So those are just a couple of the ways that we use the double line setup. Now, one way that this is also different from a lot of the balance training tools that you have in your clinic is that the sort of anterior posterior sway control that's needed on the SlackBoard here is wonderful for fall prevention, because right when you have someone step up here, they're going to start to feel their body moving back and forth, and just having them stand here and get sort of conditioned to this environment is great. If you want to layer on a few more of those challenges that will help with fall prevention, we can start to engage in some vestibular cues. Like one of the great things that we kind of have programmed is just instructing a patient to stand sort of with tall posture looking forward, and then their head and gaze goes to the right to whatever extent they're able to turn. Their head and gaze goes to the left to whatever extent they're able to turn. And then their head and gaze comes back up to center, and then they'll look up. And then back to forward. And you can do this while in all sorts of positions, but that's just one vestibular challenge that we see clinicians engage with patients that are more on the neural or maybe spinal cord injuries or vestibular patients, of course, all able to engage in challenges like that. We never want to impose too much demand on a patient to where they're not going to be set up for success. So again, just a couple of examples. Really appreciate you guys checking out our products here. You can go to our website at gibbon-usa.com. We're going to work with a couple of your colleagues at Team Rehab to hopefully get you some nice discounts. If you ever want to reach out to me directly to learn more on the research side, on the programming side, we've got a ton of video content that covers how to use the boards, and it's divided up by body part, or body segment, I should say. So we have a bunch of foot and ankle content, a bunch of knee content, hip, low back, going up the kinetic chain for all sorts of patient types as well. So really appreciate you guys watching, and we hope you got some good information out of this little tutorial / product demo, and we hope you become a customer and hope you love your products. Thanks.